Welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I am, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. And this is our 180th episode. Our returning guest is Jonathan Fowler. This is Jonathan's 54th appearance on the podcast. For a complete list, check the show notes. Jonathan graduated with a BA in History from Indiana University in 2006. He is an unabashed left-wing political junkie. He has lived and worked in South Korea for over 10 years, trying to help the citizens of that great nation, hopefully, talk pretty one day. And now, on to the show.
Man, I'm winding down. I had a long, busy day over here, for sure.
Yeah, you were teaching earlier?
Yeah. I had 3 pretty long hours at the end of the day.
I'm glad you made it home okay the other day when you called me. You sounded pretty pretty gone.
Wait.
You don't remember calling me?
No. Wow. Okay.
You fell asleep on the phone? You don't remember any of this?
I did?
Yeah.
Wait, was this... Hold on. Okay, the day that... Okay, there's only one day this probably could have happened, which would have been...
I think you probably know which...
Last
day.
Friday?
No.
What? Wait, what? Not last Friday?
You said you were coming home from someplace, you were super drunk, you were walking home, you called me on Facebook.
I did? Okay,
Yes.
That had to have been last Friday.
Let me look. I don't think it was, but maybe.
Because that was the only time I got super drunk.
Right, maybe it was. I'm looking back through the messages if it says when, because I had a missed call from you and then I called you back.
What did I say? I honestly have no idea. I had no idea. Honestly.
You said that you had gone on it. Was it a double date maybe or something, or something like that? You had been out with some people, and you'd been drinking a lot, and you're on your way home.
I don't think it would have been a double date. I was out with 6 of my students, I think.
Okay,
5 or 6
mind.
of my students.
Yeah.
I
Maybe
wish I'd been on a double date. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'd gone out with 5 students, I think, and we drank 2 bottles of tequila after drinking a lot of beer and soju, and then we also had some cocktails like gin and tonics and stuff. We were mixing and matching. It was utter madness.
Yeah, it sounded like it.
Yeah.
You told me a little bit about your thoughts of the debate before you'd seen it, but I thought maybe we could save that for the actual show when you're more coherent.
Okay, well, I have no memory of this conversation at all, so I don't know what I said, so that's fine. It's all new to me now.
Oh, it sounds good. For our listeners as well.
Okay, well, that pieces together, because that night, the next day, we all woke up and I checked on my students and everything to see if everybody was okay. And basically, nobody knew how they got home. One guy had ridden a bicycle home, but he didn't know how. One guy had taken a taxi, but he didn't remember taking the taxi. I apparently walked home and was on a phone call, which I did not know. So that's fascinating. Okay. Well, okay. The mystery deepens.
Well, I made sure you got home because you were on the way home, and then you got in the elevator, and then you made your way in, and then you stopped talking at a certain point, so I assume you just passed out, and then I hung up.
That probably is what happened, and I don't know. I don't remember waking up if my phone battery was halfway dead or something. It probably would have been if I did something like that. I mean, it must have been almost completely dead, but I don't think it was fully dead. Wow. Okay. Well. Well, that's, like I said, that's the kind of drunk you only get once or twice a year.
Yeah. Right.
So. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, good to know. Okay, that answers a few questions. Yeah, I was extremely drunk, and I don't remember how I got home, so that must have been maybe calling you was I gotta stay conscious and cogent here. Otherwise, I'm going to be sleeping on the streets. I don't know. Yeah, it was wild. We had a crazy time, but I think everybody had a pretty good time. Nobody vomited and stuff, so.
Awesome.
So we've watched the vice presidential debate, and I'm very unclear right now as to whether or not they are having a presidential debate, a second presidential debate.
I don't think
are they going to do that again now? Are they back on or what?
No, as far as I know, it's all no. I think it's over.
Okay. maybe
They had
for
the
the
dueling
best.
town halls last night, but I haven't heard anything beyond that. But I would assume that there's not going to be any more. There might be,
Yeah.
but I haven't heard anything about it, so I can look it up.
Okay.
But
I don't know. I thought I heard that Trump was maybe wanting to do it again now or something. He's better from COVID or whatever now. So I don't know. I mean, I'd just assume they didn't.
yeah,
I mean, unless there are some really robust rules from the Presidential Debate Commission or whatever the group that puts these
right.
on is.
Well, last time they were working on the honor system that they had all tested, and so I don't think
Yeah,
we can
no, I mean,
rely on
honor
that.
system and Donald Trump should never be used in the same sentence, basically, and they should know that.
Yeah.
The very frustrating thing about the past 4 years is that as individuals or as an individual group, everybody goes into the Donald Trump situation thinking that they should give him the benefit of the doubt at the beginning, which is always wrong because you only get one chance and he never, does the right thing. So it's like, yeah, no, there should be no, this guy lies like he breathes. There's no
Yeah.
honor system with this guy. My God, you're risking the health of the two possible
Oldest.
leaders of the country for the next 4 years
Yeah.
with a man whose dishonesty is matched only by his incompetence. I mean, so you assume, yes, he's the president. You assume they're keeping him safe and taking care of him, but everybody around him is incompetent, basically. Why would you assume that?
Yeah.
It doesn't
Absolutely.
give me great faith in the debate commission that they would, drop the ball on something like that.
No, I almost
So,
think he was trying to infect him. Honestly, like it wouldn't cross
yeah,
my mind that he wouldn't do
it may be
that.
too late for me, but what will Americans do if they can't have Joe Biden either? Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. And Bernie
yeah,
comes in off the ropes.
yeah. It's
People's elbow.
I think like when the next president comes in, we need to have a serious inquiry about exactly who knew what and when
hmm
regarding the president's infection, and
hmm
exactly how much intentionality there was behind having him come late, not get tested, be there without a mask, have his family take
Yeah.
off their masks in the audience when they weren't supposed
hmm
to, and they know that people are unlikely to challenge them because it's a presidential debate. Your debate is your purpose is to have the debate there, and if you kick out one of the two participants, then you're not doing a very good job at holding the debate, are you? So it's kind of like they have a vested interest in keeping him there, even if he's flaunting the rules openly. So
Right. Well, that kind of brings us to this debate because they had a plexiglass shield on either side of either the candidates, which I don't know how much that does anyway. But I remember before the debate, the Pence team was like, "Well, she can have it bare if she wants one." It's like,
yeah, well, I mean, I understand it to some degree. I mean, the implication is that you know Mike Pence and everybody else in the Trump administration are very likely infected and very likely just spreading this stuff.
yeah,
And obviously that can be an insulting thing if you're that guy. But I don't know. Why should we not assume that?
yeah, exactly. Especially since his eye was all bloodshot too.
Yeah, what was going on with that? It was like
Yeah. And then he rushed,
creepy.
and then after the debate, he was going to make an appearance in Indiana to cast his vote or whatever, and he had like two more events after that that all got canceled, and he went back to Washington, D.C. So who knows if maybe he even was tested and found positive. We don't even know. But I mean, he's been to other events since then, so if that's true, he's gone off to infect more people. So
Yeah, well, I assume he's okay now or whatever. We haven't heard anything, so.
I guess.
But yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's we will. Anyways, we watched the debate,
hmm
the vice presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence on October 8th, 2020, at the University of Utah, held by the Commission on Presidential Debates. That's the organization I should have been name dropping there, I guess. And the debate moderator was Susan Page from USA Today.
What do you think of her performance overall?
I don't know. It's unfortunately I'm a little bit removed. It's been a week since I watched this thing, right?
Right.
Well, what can I say about her performance? Well, I don't know. USA Today. Well, I don't know. What do we think of them as a news organization? That's an interesting question.
Well, they are owned by Gannett, and Gannett is now owned by Hometown Media or something or another, and they own a lot of newspapers now. So they're very homogenous, kind of not very, I don't know, not very local, I guess. I mean, I guess they have local papers, but USA Today is like kind of a generic paper that you get when you stay in a hotel or something.
Oh no,
Generally.
yeah, I know what it is. I haven't seen an actual USA Today since probably like 1997. So
Well, they own the Indianapolis Star is the only reason I see it a lot, because they use a lot of stories from the USA Today network in the Indy Star nowadays. So
okay.
I'm probably more familiar with it lately than I was before that happened. So.
Well, I think I shared a link to you, which was the some sort of a measure of political bias, and they said that USA Today has a center media bias.
Which doesn't mean neutral, right? As the thing.
Yeah, apparently it doesn't mean neutral. It means that they aggressively, go towards the center.
Yeah, they kind of defer to the status quo.
Yeah, which is it's a position. So.
And especially with a totally out of control administration like this one, to proceed as normal is a choice too. So.
Yeah. And I guess there was some mention that on December 11th of 2019 last year, so almost a year ago, they did have an op-ed calling for Trump's impeachment. So I guess credit there. But I think I also heard somewhere that Susan Page herself has some involvement in Indiana or something, or she had thrown a party for this woman with an Indian name who was Mike Pence's protege or something in Indiana politics or something. I honestly, I don't remember what the story there was exactly, but yeah, that doesn't seem like there was some suggestion that she probably should have recused herself, considering that she had a direct connection to one of the two participants.
Interesting you should say that about the moderator, because the second debate, which was canceled in lieu of these town hall debates because Trump wouldn't do the virtual debate. So the guy that was supposed to do that debate was from C-SPAN, and he apparently lied about his Twitter account being hacked, because before the debate, Trump had been like needling him on Twitter, and he sent what he thought, I think, was a direct message to Anthony Scaramucci saying, should I respond to Trump? But it was like a public message. And then after he like deleted it, everyone pointed this out. And then he said his Twitter account had gotten hacked. And then like a couple days later, they're like, well, he actually lied about this, so he's been suspended now. So.
Oh man. Yeah, that's a mess and a half.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Wow.
And he's like somebody I recognize from C-SPAN. He does all those like, if you ever watch C-SPAN, he does like the call-in thing where they have authors on and have people call in and ask questions. He's like an exec. I forget his name. It's like Scully or something or another. It's very, very familiar if you ever watch C-SPAN or videos. I
don't catch as much C-SPAN as I'd like to these days.
Yeah.
But, sorry, Bob. We're not all as passionate about the media as you, I suppose.
Jeez. Where you been? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Trying to return to my home drunk. Things like that.
Yeah, apparently.
Living life. Yeah, no, C-SPAN has some value. Okay. Let's see. So Susan Page started off by saying something. She addressed the audience.
Good evening. From the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, welcome to the first and only Vice Presidential Debate of 2020, sponsored by the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm Susan Page of USA Today. It is my honor to moderate this debate, an important part of our democracy. In Kingsbury Hall tonight, we have a small and socially distant audience, and we've taken extra precautions during this pandemic. Among other things, everyone in the audience is required to wear a face mask, and the candidates will be seated 12 feet apart. The audience is enthusiastic about their candidates, but they've agreed to express that enthusiasm only twice, at the end of the debate and now when I introduce the candidates. Please welcome California Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence.
She said, "I'd like to congratulate you on scoring the most exclusive tickets in the world. Hamilton has nothing on the Commission of Presidential Debates tickets, so welcome, family of Mike Pence and family of Kamala Harris, and especially my bosses at USA Today." And I'm like, my God, so much for, American citizens at least even being, symbolically in the audience or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah.
Another person's
Congratulations to the people who already have power. You're invited to watch this debate, the most exclusive, thing. I'm sure maybe they had some citizens out there too, but.
Yeah, I know I've been over this before, but do you think there's any value in having an audience there?
They're
not allowed to say anything. They didn't really say anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they need audience participation. It's not a Gallagher show. You're not going to smash watermelons on them.
Yeah, I question the validity of the entire debate format. I think there are so many institutions in modern America that are just, teetering on and persisting based only on inertia, basically. They don't serve their function anymore.
Capital letter because it's
the debate format, nobody ever answers a question they don't want to answer.
Oh, this debate was like, especially with Pence, was like, and Kamala Harris did it too, but it's like, well, before I answer that, I want to address something. It's like, no.
Mike Pence was like perpetually behind. He was one question behind because he would try to keep attacking on some issue from the previous thing.
Yeah.
Where he'd want to, I got to respond to that. I got to respond to that.
And they always fold immediately. The moderators always fold when he pushes like that, and it's like, just insist, say no, put your foot down.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, he does that for one question, and then he has to do it for the next question.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, he's done like 3 topics in a row where he's perpetually fighting the last verbal battle, and he's not answering the question. He's buying himself massive amounts of time to consider how he even wants to answer the question he's been asked, if he wants to address it at all. And yeah, it was ridiculous. So, I think like Americans really need to think about what is the desired function of a presidential debate or of, a Supreme Court or of any of these institutions that aren't really behaving or performing the way that they're supposed to anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And a presidential debate is supposed to let people know what these people believe about certain things. And that doesn't work if they're able to obfuscate and, muddy the waters and, bring up meaningless examples or, all these different tactics that they use. I think like it needs to not be conducted like a debate. It needs to be conducted like, we're here to get answers. We're going to get the answers from you.
Right.
Make that hard for us if you want, but we're going to, ask the same question again and again. Maybe like I think that alcohol should be involved. Like if you don't answer the question the first time, you take a shot and we ask you again. Like, and honest, I'm not even joking about that. Like, seriously, we want to get answers in vino veritas, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get you drunk and we're going to find out exactly, we don't want your talking points. Talking points are bullshit. We want to know. And that's another thing that I noticed. The vibe that I get from Mike Pence is that this is not a man who's being honest because because he's talking about, he is a right-wing person. Okay.
Yes.
And I interact with right-wing people in some capacities in my life, and I know how they talk and how they think. And when you talk about like, what do you think about, black people thinking that they're not being treated fairly these days or something? He's like, well, it's a very sad story and there have been some tragic incidents. But, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, I stand with this police. Okay. I have never heard a normal right-wing person do that. That's not how they talk. That's not how any right-wing person I know talks. They don't preface it with, a paean to the poor black people in America or something. They go directly to Blue Lives Matter.
Right.
They get very inflammatory very fast. What that tells me is that Mike Pence is either like the most enlightened right-winger ever conceptualized, or he knows he has to say this stuff before he says the other stuff. Otherwise, he's going to come off badly.
Yes. Right.
And that's something that I think you can really eliminate if you start getting I've heard people say it should be hosted like a dinner party or something, like they're just sitting around dinner having a conversation, not having a formal debate. I think the formal debate, I don't know. You know, we didn't have a debate club in Mitchell, Indiana. I didn't do a debate in university. We've never had any training in this. But, you know, as much as they hold it up as this lofty, idealized version of exchanging ideas, it's really just a way to obfuscate and confuse issues and throw out meaningless details that, you know, the other person, if they don't know the details, they can't counteract it right away, but it doesn't actually invalidate their argument. And the audience just gets confused, or they think, oh, it sounds like that person answered the question, so I guess, you know, yeah, they're doing a good job, I guess, even if they've totally avoided the actual question. Or they've, I think it's just rife with problems.
Right. Well, I think they should be doing more live fact checking, because like they don't have any, like, it doesn't seem like there's any earpiece or any like screen that they can send notes to them, but I wish there was somebody off camera who was just like constantly Googling and fact checking everything these people are saying. And either, if you don't want to stop the flow of the debate, at least have it come up on the screen. This is true, that is not true. You know what I mean? Because like these lies that just get perpetrated over and over again, it's like those are what stick in people's heads just if they hear something a lot. And it's like if you don't correct it the first time, it's like you're saying that it's okay, you know. So it's there should be some way to like live fact check. I don't know.
I don't know if the debate moderators could handle having an earpiece in. I'm, you know, maybe I don't know. Maybe like the news reporters, they're used to that or something on the news. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you're having, you know, 3 conversations at the same time, and then you also have an earpiece with somebody chiming in your ear while you're trying to listen to the people right in front of you. And certainly during the Trump-Pence debate, how chaotic and crazy that was. I
Trump
think,
Biden,
like,
you mean?
if there was an earpiece in you know, in the guy's ear, Mike, what's his name? Mike Wallace?
Chris Wallace, and it was Trump.
Chris Wallace, yeah. If there had been an earpiece in Chris Wallace's ear, his head would have exploded on live television, probably from just information overload.
It wouldn't have been good television.
Yeah. Saturday Night Live, if you're listening,
right?
I do accept royalties for my contributions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. So the families of the candidates and her bosses at USA Today were in the audience, and they got the most exclusive political tickets in the world, I guess. Okay, so our first subject was what would a Biden-Harris administration do January and February that Trump wouldn't?
Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete recovery and for the recovery of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus. The 2 campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for tonight. I'm here to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching. One note, no one in either campaign or at the Commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask. This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption by me or the other candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots? A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Thank you, Susan. Well, the American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said, you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that Joe Biden has and that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that. And frankly, this administration has forfeited their right to re-election based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, more than 210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you. And our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China, President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resource and support they needed. And we began, really, before the month of February was out, to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe we'll have literally tens of millions of doses of a vaccine before the end of this year. The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way. I mean, quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about. And I think the American people know that this is a president who has put the health of America first, and the American people, I believe with my heart, can be proud of the sacrifices they have made. It's saved countless American lives.
Senator Harris. Would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country, American lives that have been lost, families that are grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
no, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to
have
add,
to
but
weigh in here.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
weigh
speaking.
in.
Yeah, you
So
can have
I
15 more
wanna-
seconds, and then we'll give the vice president
Thank
a
you.
chance to
So I
respond.
want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back? How calm
Thank
were
you.
you
Thank
when
you,
your
Senator
children
Harris.
couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to
You
respond.
know, there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one. And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts and in our prayers. But when you say what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked, that's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made.
I'm referring
The
to
reality,
the
if I may finish, Senator, the reality is Dr. Fauci said everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd get through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. Now, that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also
Thank you,
said
Vice
to us, if we
President
did everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice President
Now, one
Pence.
life lost is
Thank
too
you.
many, Susan. But the American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their neighbors first, our doctors, our nurses, our first
Thank you,
responders.
Vice President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the American people have done.
Vice President Pence, you were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago at what seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first. And President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day, we surged resources to New Jersey and New York and New Orleans and Detroit. We told the American people what needed to be done, and the American people made the sacrifices. When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality is the work of the President of the United States goes on. A vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney
Yes,
Barrett.
thank you. Thank you, Vice
But
President
at
Pence.
that, if I may say, that Rose Garden event, there's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested
Yes.
for coronavirus, and it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and I trust the American people to make choices in the best interest of their health. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris consistently talk about mandates, and not just mandates with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care,
Thank you,
the
Vice
Green New
President
Deal, all government control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American people.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader,
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker, knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people. So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked about
It is asking too much of the people. That they would not be equipped with the information they need to help themselves to protect
Susan,
their parents and their children.
Sorry. Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's fine, I'm Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me.
Let's see. Kamala said, well, she said various things. She said, you're on one side of Donald Trump's ledger if you wear a mask. You're on the other side if you don't. This administration has forfeited their right to re-election. The vaccine should be free for all. And Mike Pence said something. Joe Biden called China travel ban xenophobic and hysterical. He talked about Operation Warp Speed, the Star Trek reference to attempt to speed up the process of approving drugs, experimental drugs to deal with COVID, which I'm sure Donald Trump is probably screaming about somewhere right now. I want the vaccine out tomorrow, at least by November 2nd. Something, he's probably screaming about that. Let's see. Pence said Joe Biden's plans look a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about.
Yeah, I caught that.
I guess. I forget the story. Joe Biden plagiarized something in one of his previous presidential runs, and
Now to the controversy that has suddenly erupted around the Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden.
He gets himself into trouble.
The charge that he has plagiarized parts of his speeches.
On a couple of occasions, he's accused of lifting the words of others.
And I started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university? Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
The most memorable is at a debate in Iowa.
Is it because our fathers and mothers were not bright? Is it because I'm the first Biden in 1,000 generations to get a college and a graduate degree that I was smarter than the rest?
At Iowa, he is caught using the words of Neil Kinnock, who's a British politician.
Why am I the first Kinnock in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Why is Glenys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Was it because all our predecessors were thick?
And passing them off as his own.
Is it because they didn't work hard? My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania and would come up after 12 hours and play football for 4 hours?
Was it because they were weak? Those people who could work 8 hours underground and then come up and play football?
He's quoted Kinnock before on the trail and cited him appropriately. In this instance, he just says the words as if they are extemporaneous Joe Biden words. Does not mention Kinnock, no citation.
No, it's not because they weren't as smart. It's not because they didn't work as hard. It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
It was because there was no platform upon which they could stand.
And then it gets picked up in the press.
Biden seemed to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
So this moment begets other moments, unpleasant moments for Joe Biden.
CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children.
The health of our children.
The quality of our education.
The quality of their education.
The joy of their play.
Or the joy of their play.
There is a story on his record in law school.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation.
Then,
Question. What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class?
a video from the spring circulates of him.
And the other question is, could you quickly, I think we all
I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect.
Essentially telling a voter in New Hampshire who asked about his academic history, I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship.
And he goes on to exaggerate his record in law school, saying things like, I was the only one in my class to get a full academic scholarship, and other things that turned out not to be true. And that combination of both the exaggeration and the sort of belligerence with a member of the electorate did not sit well when that clip began circulating in wider fashion. And this sort of snowballs onto itself.
If and when I've ever quoted anyone without saying this is their quote, it's either because, in fact, it's been clearly known by everyone what it is, or I honestly did not know I was quoting somebody else.
He has always been dogged by this idea, and it's an insecurity he's talked about a lot himself, that he was not necessarily a policy heavyweight or a brilliant thinker. He didn't go to an Ivy League school, and there was something of a chip on his shoulder as a result of this, and he really thinks he's been disrespected in the national media, not taken seriously enough. There's a cliche on Capitol Hill about workhorses and show horses, and the perception among a lot of people watching him is that he's a show horse.
I took the cases out of the Law Review article and the footnotes out of the Law Review article, and I thought what I was doing, honestly, was the right way to do it.
So he holds a kind of stop the bleeding press conference at the Capitol, trying to essentially reset his campaign and stabilize himself as a candidate.
And I footnoted it.
And it does not go well.
I was wrong, but I was not malevolent in any way.
He comes off defensive, defiant.
That I did not intentionally move to mislead anybody. I didn't.
And you can see him really start to see his initial case, which was so rooted in his own personal integrity, start to fall away. And when that falls away, there's not a whole lot left, because there was not a really strong policy undergirding this campaign in the first place.
Oh, this was, decades ago. He maybe this is more than one incident he's referring to, but there was a British politician who had this famous speech that he paraphrased and claimed it as his own. And I think there was another incident maybe beyond that of speechifying that wasn't necessarily original to Joe Biden that he claimed as his own. So,
yeah. Well, didn't Trump's wife plagiarize Michelle Obama?
Yes.
I mean, the frustrating thing to me about, I'm a layman, right? I'm just a normal guy. And these retorts come to me. Like, why are they not coming to the Democratic candidates? Like, why are they not saying, hey, like we said in the other debate, you want to talk about my son using cocaine? What about, there's a lot of rumors swirling about Don Jr. You want to talk about Joe Biden plagiarizing a British politician in the 80s or something? What about your boss's wife plagiarizing Michelle Obama, for God's sakes, who by all accounts, Donald Trump can't stand the Obamas. There's always a hypocrisy at example, and it's not too hard to reach for it. So I don't know. It's I have no idea how you prepare for these debates. I have no idea what they tell you not to bring up, not to mention, not to go after, not to get baited into. I don't know. Maybe there's a strategy, but whatever.
Again.
Let's see. Kamala then said something. He said the president wanted people to remain calm. And then I guess Mike Pence was interrupting, and she said, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. And she kept having these moments where she said that, she would say that, or there was another thing that she would say sometimes. And, I don't know. You see all the memes on Twitter and Facebook and everything like, oh, when a black woman tells you she's speaking and she makes that face, you better watch out because you're about to get it. And I'm like, never got it. Nothing ever happened, right?
You have to treat people.
I don't know. It was weird. And she said, so I want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you were going to get your next roll of toilet paper, when your kids were sent home from school, when your kids couldn't see your parents because they might kill them? which were, it was a good line. It was all good points. Yeah. Donald Trump doesn't want to keep people calm. People have not remained calm throughout this thing. And it's ridiculous to suggest that he lied to American people because he wanted anything for them. And he didn't want anything for them. He wanted whatever he wanted for himself by keeping people calm. He wanted the stock market to knock out his real estate or whatever.
Right.
The golf courses and hotels or whatever that he's losing money on already. Let's see. Pence said, saying it hasn't worked, I guess he's assuming the coronavirus response, is an insult to the sacrifices of the American people. He dodged a question about the administration not following their own guidelines, leading super spreader events at the Amy Coney Barrett event at the Rose Garden. He said, Trump and I trust the American people to make choices. I was thinking, like, how's that going for you? I mean, my God, today, what was it, like 68,000 new infections in America nationwide in one day or something crazy
insane
shit.
Yeah, we're setting records.
Don't trust the American people to make the right decisions. They're making shit decisions. Come on.
That's why we're in this mess right now.
Yeah. If you're trying to claim that that would be one thing if Americans were doing the right thing by and large. By and large, it seems that a lot of people are not. Let's see. He says Biden and Harris talk about mandates, government takeover of healthcare, the Green New Deal. Let's see. Kamala responded, and again, I don't know. I tend to refer to politicians. I know I should say Senator Harris responded, yada yada. But I mean, like, I don't know. I call him Pence because Mike is a common name. I call her Kamala because Harris is a common name, and I feel like Pence and Kamala kind of distinguishes them a little bit more.
Yeah, you can shorthand it. It's fine. I mean, Bernie. We call him Bernie most of the time. I mean, it's yeah. It's only Trump that would take umbrage because he wants to be called Mr. Trump or whatever.
Yeah, I used to mockingly refer to him as the Donald, but I don't. I feel there was like a friendly jocularity to that I don't no longer feel for him. So
yeah, exactly. He's not quite as harmless as he once appeared.
Yeah, it was cute when he was just this like idiot out there somewhere, but it's like it's not cute anymore. And Kamala responded, okay. She said he was not respecting the people's choices by not giving them information, right? People can't make smart choices if the presidency is giving them false information or not sharing important information with them.
No, you can look at that if you want to see what something looks like.
And speaking of naming, this is the right moment to actually have mentioned that, because the moderator said, Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry. And Kamala said, that's fine, I'm Kamala. She says, no, you're Senator Harris to me. And then she asked the question, would you take a Trump vaccine? And
for life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now. If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Kamala Harris said, if health professionals, if Dr. Fauci tell us to take it, I'll be the first in line. But if Trump tells us to take it, I'm not taking it, which I thought was a pretty strong answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is the first place I've noted that second place I've noted that Pence was ignoring a question. It was ignoring a question about being vice president to the oldest president ever if reelected, like if he was prepared to take over the duties or whatever or something. He said, it's unconscionable to undermine confidence in a vaccine. Stop playing politics with people's lives. He said, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu had just arrived in the United States. 60 million Americans contracted swine flu.
I couldn't believe he tried this.
Versus only 7 million with COVID. If it had been as deadly as COVID, there would have been 2 million dead Americans. It's like, honestly, I pretty much had forgotten about swine flu. Like,
Yeah.
what? A bunch of people got sick, and then nothing really happened. Like, okay, 14 million or something died. Is that right? Is that
I don't
remembering
know
numbers
what
somewhat?
the tally
Or
was. I'll have to look it
14,000?
up. But what year was it again?
2009 swine flu.
I'll look it up. I don't know. It was like, I remember I was really freaked out about that when it first started, but once it was like, oh, this really isn't as much of a thing as I thought it was going to be, I kind of like relaxed about it. But I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I don't know. It's like that was a successful, you know, it wasn't like this. This is like the biggest mass casualty event in like half a century. Like, this is not even
At least.
comparable. Yeah.
Yeah, probably a century.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really, like, if I'm a debate grader or something, which I guess I am, but if I were like an official debate grader, it's like, you know, to say that we actually do know what failure in a pandemic looks like, and it was this event that most Americans don't even remember, like that does not get a lot of points for me. You know,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
Well, I'm looking at the figures right here. It looks like there was almost 500,000 confirmed cases, 700 million estimated suspected cases.
Wait,
There was
700 million? We're not talking about just America here.
Yeah, the world.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the America's stats are. I guess I should look for that. But anyways, nowhere near what this is. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, by his numbers, it was more cases, many more cases, but a drastically lower fatality rate. And that's the important part. I mean, nobody cares if 60 million people got the sniffles. You know, nobody wants to shut down the economy for that. But when you've got what do we got? Almost 217,000 dead right now in America. You have to respond differently, Pence. This is what failure looks like. Nobody believes that the pig flu, the swine flu, was a failure and this was a success.
Yeah,
that is weak sauce.
Bizarre.
Absolute weak sauce.
Bizarre. Yeah. So strange.
Yeah. Okay, there was another question. Do voters deserve to know presidential health information?
Vice President Pence, there have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on to the issue of
thank you, but I would like to go back because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trials, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is it's just unacceptable. And let me also say, you know, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, Not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we still learned from it. And I think the American people, I'm going to say again, can be proud of what we have done. And Senator, please stop undermining confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19, gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now, I know would make her proud, and she must be looking down on this. Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about the value and the dignity of public service, and about the importance of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners to for-profit colleges that were taking advantage of veterans. And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I've been in regular receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose which is about lifting up the American people. And after the 4 years that we have seen of Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released a sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination.
Thank you.
I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year. And the stakes have never been higher, but I think the choice has never been clear.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond to the same question I asked, which is, do voters have a right to know more detailed health information about presidential candidates and especially about presidents, especially when they're facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely, and that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes. We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000? And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know what is influencing the President's decisions. And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you, or self-interest? So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
But the American people have a president who's a businessman, he's a job creator, who's paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. He's created tens of thousands of American jobs. And the president said those public reports are not accurate. And the president's also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice
and
President.
turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation, unleashing American energy, fighting for free and fair trade, and all of that's on the line if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
And Pence, I don't know, he said something like, "I want to congratulate you on the historic nature of your nomination." I don't know. He probably said something else. Again, I can't get everything that he says, but that's what I thought was noteworthy.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kamala said Trump paid $750 in taxes and he's $400,000 in debt. Who does Commander-in-Chief owe that money to? Again, somehow they've gotten away from the question pretty quickly. Mike Pence says Donald Trump was a businessman, a job creator. He paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. The president says those public reports are not accurate, talking about the New York Times article that said that he only paid $750 in taxes.
That's a good segue into our third topic, which is about the economy. This has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, Blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for. On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that. He'll invest in infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family that makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about the economy, which is it's about investing in the people of our country as opposed to passing a tax bill, which had the benefit of letting American corporations go offshore to do their business.
Thank you,
You're
Senator
welcome.
Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been predicting a rapid and robust recovery, but the latest economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. Because when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of 4 had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, the average household income for a family of 4 increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think, Susan. I mean, right after a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height, we've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, fought for free and fair trade, and secured $4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families, save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally have spared no expense to help the American people and the American worker through this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland. And Joe Biden wants to go back to the economic surrender to China, that when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth and opportunity, 4 more years of President Donald Trump. 2021 is going to be the biggest economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator Harris.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well,
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is absolutely not true.
Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who, during the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but
important.
we need to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Senator Harris, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well. And President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now will continue with 4 more years of President Donald Trump.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change.
And I thought that was really interesting that he said the president says those public reports are not accurate.
Not that they are, just that he says they are.
Yeah, this seems like some serious ass covering from Mike Pence to me. Like,
absolutely.
I'm not saying those reports are inaccurate. I'm saying Donald Trump said they were. So if it turns out that that's not true later, then don't blame me. I'm just, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying what he says. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, and he's not even, when he denies it, he's not even denying anything specific. He's just denying it. He's just called fake news, whole thing. It's like, well, which part? Citation needed.
Yeah. All right, at this point, they got to the third of what I thought were supposed to be 6 topics, but I think they were actually more, which was the economy. Would Joe Biden raising taxes hurt the recovery? Kamala says, repeal tax cuts for the top 1%, infrastructure investment. She makes reference to infrastructure week, kind of the running joke of the Trump presidency that they were ever going to get around to infrastructure week. A $2 trillion deficit. And then she brought up something that I thought was very interesting, which is actually the first I'd heard of it, which is a two-year community college would be free under Joe Biden. Families that make less than $125,000 a year could go to a public university for free. And I'm very curious if that's retroactive or not. Because that could be pertinent to some people if that were retroactive.
Yes.
Holla at your boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they talked about student student loan debt across the board would be cut by $10,000 per person, I guess. So that's something. That's not Bernie Sanders levels of something, but that's something that I'm curious. And I'm fascinated. I'm a politically engaged person.
Here we go.
And I don't check the candidates' websites every day, but why am I just hearing about this for the first time at the vice presidential debate, a month before the election, right?
Right.
Like, why are they not blaring this from the rooftops? Like, if they were using Facebook ad targeting properly or something, they would be getting this message to me. Yeah, this is pertinent. This is okay. In defense of the debate, this is one of the two major revelations in this debate that was a revelation of something that Joe Biden wants to do, apparently, that I have not heard of yet. And for that reason, it's pertinent, it's valid, it's useful information to have.
From the area.
So I want to know more about that. I want to know if that's going forward from January 20th or if that's retroactive. I want to know a lot of things about that. I mean, it sounds like the debt forgiveness for $10,000 across the board. It sounds like that's going to be retroactive. Going back to when, though, I'm curious about a lot of things about that.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, and frankly, I think it's an absolute crime. It's political malpractice that Joe Biden didn't hash this out with Bernie Sanders months ago when they were doing the commission or whatever between the two campaigns and this was one of the things that was one of Bernie's issues that Joe Biden didn't sound like he was ever going to compromise on. And you know what? People like Kyle Kulinski, I mean, these were some of the issues, as well as I think Medicare for all, legalized marijuana, student loan forgiveness, stuff like this. These were issues that they said, they basically said on their shows, right now I'm not voting for Joe Biden. If Joe Biden will embrace any two out of three of these issues or something, then he's got my vote. If he doesn't, then, that's a deal breaker for me. And that was the narrative that they put out to their audiences. And I've said before, I think it's irresponsible for people in safely blue states who have, hundreds of thousands of, monthly YouTube viewers to put out the message that they're not going to vote for Donald Trump, because it spreads out to people who are not in safe blue states who take cues from these people.
You're not going to vote for Joe Biden?
Yeah. And I think both of those guys have come around on that now, and they're going to vote for him. But that's several months of bad press for Joe Biden with some people with some very big microphones talking to the far left, basically, who are not on your side, and they're just sitting there saying every day why they're not going to vote for you. This shit should have been out there months ago. You should have realized this is what you have to do. Put it out there, let these people know it, and get them on side early. So it's I'm glad that they're coming to it now, but it's very frustrating that I'm hearing about this less than a month before the debate. It
is frustrating.
Yeah. Okay, so that was one of the interesting points where we actually gained some new information about this thing, and for our listeners, I hope that is something that may influence them.
And draw a square on
let's see. Mike Pence then complained about under Obama the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. And it's like, again, this is the problem with the debate format. That may be true, but that's because this was the greatest economic disaster in America since the Great Depression, if I'm not wrong, right? Yeah, major disasters bring about very slow recoveries. That's a fact. That's not it's too bad the previous Republican president got us into another disaster where we had to drag ourselves out. And it's a sad story once again that Donald Trump has once again dragged us into an economic disaster that we once again are going to have to drag ourselves out of with a Democrat, which is a trend that we have commented on many times here. He said, he continues, 2021 is going to be the biggest year for the economy. I don't know what that means. That could be a very good thing or a very bad thing.
Yeah.
So, Kamala said that Biden will not raise taxes on anybody making less than $400,000 a year. And I'm like, my God, is that the Democratic definition of middle class now?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I don't know. In my book, if you're making over $100,000 a year, you're upper class solidly. I know that's not going to be, a popular opinion perhaps in certain areas, but
Right.
400, yeah. And it's so frustrating. So many people complain about, oh, Democrats are going to raise taxes. Oh, I worked hard for the money. Oh, da 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 da. Like literally, if you're not making more, how many of those people who complain and bitch about that on the internet or whatever are making more than $400,000 a year?
Probably none, but they could in the future, and they don't want to screw it up for
1% of the
themselves.
1% or something. Yeah, basically
one day
none
they
of the
could
people on our Facebook feed. So
Yeah, right.
but we never stop hearing about it from them. So so Pence tax back. He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. He said so, like the Trump tax cuts benefit people. I guess the implication being that the Trump tax cuts do benefit people making less than $400,000 per year. So how can he say that he's both going to repeal the entire Trump tax cut, but he's not going to raise taxes on anybody making less than $400,000 a year? It's like, I don't know. There's probably a reasonable explanation, middle ground somewhere there. But yes, you may have caught him on a technicality that he said two things, but I don't know. It's your administration is responsible for 200,000 dead Americans. Like, okay, listen, yeah, congratulations. You caught him on a discrepancy, perhaps.
I don't want to yell and shout at me.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel kind of mad at each other.
Continuing along. Kamala interrupted. Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. And he says, well, he says, I'm speaking. And he said, the importantness is the truth.
That's what I want you to do instead of
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can have a conversation, okay? And she continues, and now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. Exactly, well said. And at this point, I think the moderator was interrupting, and Colin said, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish. And so at this point, they have shifted from the stated topic. Okay, the stated topic is the economy. So they've gone from the economy, but then it's Pence's turn. And he says, Obamacare was a disaster. And like, I hope we'll get a chance to talk about Obamacare. You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. This is the first of two times that he'll reference that old
chestnut
from,
yeah.
Was that Nixon?
I don't remember who said it first. I'll have to look it up. But yes, it's an old phrase.
Yeah, it's before my time, but I want to say that was Nixon, maybe. Sorry, not Nixon. Reagan.
Reagan?
Yeah, I believe it was Reagan.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Oh, well, never mind. Who was he?
It may have been. Oh wait, hold on. Let me see. Yeah, it might have been related to Nixon though. It might have been in a letter to Nixon.
Okay.
Anyway, go on. I'll research it while you're talking.
Okay, so again, now he's shifted the topic from the economy to the ACA, Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. If you're a freak, if you're freaky or whatever.
If you're nasty,
how did Janet Jackson say?
If you're nasty.
Yeah, that'd be a good Bob. There's a title for the podcast. The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare if you're nasty.
Yes.
Oh, that wouldn't actually be a good title because we're talking about the debates, but it's a tight line, I think. Okay. Let's see. So he says, okay, Obamacare was a disaster. You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You have just said that you would ban fracking. And okay, so they've gone somehow they've gone from talking about the economy to Pence bringing up the ACA to Pence switching to fracking. So he's changed topics 3 times in a completely in a way that there was no lead in for that from what I can remember. So it was really bizarre to me.
Yeah.
But then Susan Page says, "Thank you very much, Mr. President. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change."
And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. Our water is among the cleanest in the world. And just a little while ago, the President signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years. So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment. Now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. But the issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation, and we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
There are no more hurricanes today than there were 100 years ago.
Thank you.
But many of the climate alarmists use hurricanes and wildfires to try and sell their bill of goods of a Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put American jobs and American workers first.
Senator Harris, as the Vice President mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress. But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa, whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out, the Green New Deal is on their campaign website. And as USA Today said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate. And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit America to the Paris Climate Accord. Look, the American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us to retrofit 4 million American business buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost jobs. President Trump is going to put America first. He's going to put jobs first, and we're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
Thank you,
But, you know, on the issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
Let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war. You lost it. What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy because of it. We are in a manufacturing recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old, who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond, because then I want to move on to
I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, this administration saw 500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through this pandemic. But a Green New Deal, your massive new mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I just need to respond very briefly.
15 seconds, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
So, you aren't arguing poorly. You aren't losing focus and not being able to stay on an uncomfortable topic. You're helping us by, just randomly jumping around from topic to topic.
Yeah, it reminded me of that moment in the other debate where Chris Wallace was like, "You're gonna like this one, Mr. President." Mm-hmm. Is he? Why do you have to tell him that?
Not great. Not great. So Mike Pence says something about forest management to prevent forest fires.
Can't believe they're blaming trees for this, but go on.
Yeah. Then he wildly overtalks the moderator on hurricanes, the Green New Deal, etc. Like just blathering on about stuff long after she is trying to end his talking time.
Yeah.
Kamala responds, Joe Biden will not ban fracking. We'll be at net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035, which I remember from the primary debates that, Bernie Sanders basically said this is unacceptable. The planet is not we can't endure until 2035 at this rate, let alone 2050. So, I'm sure, Kamala and Joe Biden want credit for this because it's better than Trump and Pence. But it's worth remembering that there are people who would say that this is unacceptable. It's unsustainable to these points. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Mike Pence talked about fracking and natural gas and stuff. He says American innovation, fracking, natural gas have reduced CO2 emissions. I don't know how that works. I think the point is that natural gas and the continued use of it have not reduced CO2 emissions. So logically, I don't even know how that's supposed to work. He said Joe Biden's been a cheerleader for communist China for the past several decades. Again, he said, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. Again, he wildly overtalks the moderator again. If you're going to say that in a debate, you should have to explain exactly what you mean by it, because logically, even to politically engaged people, that just doesn't make sense. What do you mean? How is that possible? I think at one point he talked about American emissions are lower than European emissions, even though the Europeans are still in the Paris Climate Accords and stuff. And okay, is that number one? Is that even true? If it's true, what does it mean? Is it proportional? Is it, taking everything to what does that mean? Why can you explain that in more detail? It's a talking point. What does it mean? That's what I want to know. Yeah. Okay. I think the fourth topic was China.
I'd like to talk about China. We have, as our next topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. Everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. I think the American people deserve to know that. Is probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019, more liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now with regard to China, look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus. And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel from China. He said it was hysterical. He said it was
Thank you, Vice
xenophobic.
President Pence.
But President Trump has
Vice President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time is
China.
up.
We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden. For example, they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got rid of it.
It's not true.
There was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, Joe I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. Got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO. He has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific, and we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader, al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other Beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice President.
We destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor of terrorism. President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad to do harm to Americans, President Donald Trump took him out.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And America is safer, our allies are safer, and the American people know President Donald Trump will never
Thank you, Vice President
take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length because, of course, there are other topics we want to talk about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because, of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take what he said about John McCain, a great American hero And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank you.
Joe Biden would, but Joe Biden would hold Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And
Susan,
I want to make sure we have a chance
I really have
to talk
to respond to that.
about.
Look, she has
15 seconds because
I got to have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look,
well, I'm sorry, but Vice President,
look,
but you've had more time than she's had so far.
The slanders against President Donald Trump regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice President
My son
Pence.
is a captain in the United States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
The American people deserve, Susan, the American people deserve to know.
Vice President Pence, I did not, excuse me,
Susan, the
I did
American
not
people
create
deserve
the
to know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden.
Your campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you, which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court.
And the question was something about how would you describe U.S.-China relations? Are they like adversaries, enemies, competitors, or something like this? And again, Mike Pence wants to go back to the last question. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records, if I can. Senator Harris voted against the USMCA, one of only 10 senators who did. He said, "You put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers." Time magazine called Kamala Harris the most liberal senator in 2019, even ahead of Bernie Sanders or something.
Yeah, funny that he's like citing the media and he's going to bash the media in like a minute here when they get to talking about various fine people on both sides or whatever.
Yeah. Well, how does that expression go? Hypocrisy is the compliment that lies tell to the truth or something.
I hadn't heard that one before. That's good though.
Yeah, I mean that you trash the media as all the time, but the second that says something you agree with, you're not trashing them anymore. You're citing them, right? The fact that you cite the media when they agree with you and then you trash them when they don't means that actually you do seek the media's approval. It's just that when they don't give it to you, you don't want to give them any respect. But like the second that they're back to saying, it's kind of like how Christians are always like trying to reconcile science and stuff with Christianity. The second science says something that was true in the Bible or something, they're like, oh, see, science said it's true. Look at here. But like, when it's like evolution or something, they're like, no, that's bullshit. The Bible says this, and that's what I believe. And science can, go whatever.
I'll pray for you.
Yeah. Actually, what is that quote? I'm trying to remember that quote exactly. Hypocrisy or hold on a second.
Right. That sounds like a complete quote. What you said.
I feel I hate it when I'm like as a teacher and stuff too. Sometimes I have to remember quotes and idioms and expressions and stuff. And like, with a fixed expression, if you mess up one word, you've kind of ruined the expression. So I always try to get the expressions exactly right. So.
I looked up that other quote, but it was actually James R. Schlesinger, who was Secretary of Defense under Nixon and Ford, who made that your own facts thing originally. Anyway, okay. I will look up that other quote while you keep talking.
Yeah, I want to say it starts, hypocrisy is the compliment that lies pay to the truth or something. Yeah. It's something like that. Sorry, Bob. You're the fact checker in my ear here of this debate, as it were.
I can hardly type fast enough. Hypocrisy is the
Bob,
compliment. No. Here we go. Hypocrisy is the compliment vice pays to virtue.
there you go. Vice pays to virtue. Yeah. 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 So basically, the idea is,
Francois de la Rochefoucauld.
Yeah, I think it's a great quote, and it's something you really have to think about to fully understand it. But basically, like, if you rob a bank or something, and then somebody asks you, "Did you rob the bank?" You say, "No, I didn't rob the bank." The fact that you feel the need to lie about it is what tells you that it's wrong.
Yeah. It's like when Trump supporters hated the Mueller report until it came out and it didn't say explicitly that he had obstructed justice, and they're like, "Well, this totally exonerates him. Thank you." And it's like, okay, I thought this was fake, but whatever.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's it's again, Donald Trump is like a 2-year-old or something. He just, things are bad if they're nice to him, and they're good if he likes them. But and it'll be two different things on the same day. It's not consistent. There's no one way, one thing. So whatever. Okay. So Harris responded, "There's a weird obsession Trump has with getting rid of every accomplishment of President Obama and Vice President Biden. They got rid of the pandemic task force." And Mike Pence said, this is one of his common responses, "Not true, not true." He's shaking his head, "Not true."
I know.
Like, what do you mean it's not true? You can sit there and you can say that, and people watching at home who don't know can see, oh, you responded and said it's not true. I guess you
how he gets away with this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's true. Barack Obama they had people in China. They had people on the ground in China. Trump pulled them out. This is he gutted the pandemic monitoring and response things that were in place under Obama, and yet he complains, "Oh, the military was like totally out of ammo when I came in. We had to restock." The guy is so stupid. It's absolutely unbelievable how stupid they all are. But this is a verifiable thing. It's been documented. The people have been talked to. I think there's even a quote from Trump at the time that when he was letting those people go, somebody said, "Do you think it's a good idea to get rid of this task force?" And he's like, we'll just hire them back if we need them. They'll still be out there. We can still hire them if we need them if there's a pandemic or something. It's like, that's not the point. Okay.
No.
And frankly, there should be 1 million trials of this guy when he's out of here, and I think one of them should be, criminal incompetence leading to mass death in America regarding the pandemic. And this is exhibit number 1. What did you do with the Obama, pandemic response force? Why did you do it? What was the consequence of you doing what you did?
Yep.
All things that could be measured.
Yeah. I mean, we already know he just wants to undo everything Obama did, whether or not it was good or not. It's just the fact that he did it, wants to get rid of it. So.
Yeah. Well, Harris describing that as a weird obsession is a very polite way of hinting at the racist undertones of it, I think. Yeah, very sanitized way. Let's see. So again, Mike Pence, like sometimes she'll say something that Pitt did and say under his breath, like, not true.
Not true.
And you've got to admire, you got to consider, like, from his perspective, like, I'm sure Donald Trump's instructions to him were like, don't let any attack go unanswered. I don't want you ever not to say something, So even though, like, there's no defense of it, he's got to throw something out there, just like just object, even if there's no follow up, there's no argument to be made there. Just say no on the record. Kamala Harris said the trade war with China has resulted in the loss of 300,000 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession. America's leadership and global standing are based on relationships. Know who your friends are and keep your promises. Know who your enemies are and keep them in check. Then she talked about Iran, Russia, North Korea, etc. She talked about Donald Trump not trusting the United States intelligence agencies when they talked about Russia instead of trusting Putin instead. Mike Pence said, "Oh, America has kept its word, kept its promises when we moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel." Obama let ISIS take over. Trump destroyed the caliphate. Obama and Biden didn't act on military intel that Kayla Miller was being held by Baghdadi in a certain place for over a month. She was moved and killed after horrific abuse for 18 months. And then he continues and he talks about her parents were in the audience or something. And he overtalks again on his time. Harris talked about the Qasem Soleimani strike, the counterstrike that Iran did on an American position, and how Trump said that U.S. soldiers got only headaches when they had traumatic brain injuries. And she talked about how that was a pattern where he talked about men in the military are suckers and losers. What's in it for them? Russia had bounties on the heads of U.S. soldiers. Trump spoke with Putin 6 times after that without mentioning it. At this point, Kamala goes over her time a little bit. Let's see. I think the moderator said this is such an important issue, but we have other issues as well. And Mike Pence said, Susan, I really have to respond to that. And I think Susan said, look, she has 15 seconds because, and she said, well, I got to have more than that. Look. And she says, I'm sorry, Mike Pence said, well, I got to have more than that. Look. She said, I'm sorry, Vice President, but you've had more time than she's had so far.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's one of these confusing situations where they're all over talking each other and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, Pence continues trying to overtalk and kind of bulldozes some more through the conversation. And we come to topic number 5, which is the Supreme Court.
On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Yes. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others, we hope she gets a fair hearing. And we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees, you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views and
Thank you.
views.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
So
Your time
my hope
is
is
up.
that when the hearing takes place,
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as President of the United States. On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And, you know, before, when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing conditions. Yeah. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Thank you, Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator
That's true
Harris.
leadership.
You know, you mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of, if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
No, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. In 1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election. And it was 27 days before the election. And a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
People, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once again gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you now.
The American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and women, I got to tell you, people across this country, if you cherish our Supreme Court, if you cherish the separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So the Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question. So maybe the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question, but I think the American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President.
If the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, what would you want your home state of Indiana to ban all abortions? And once again, Mike Pence jumps back to the previous question because he doesn't want to talk about abortion in Indiana.
Yeah, I thought that was quite a pivot he made there. I would like to know the answer to that question myself, being a resident of the state of Indiana.
Yeah, we know people.
Sure.
My God, All right, he says, well, thank you for that question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important question before. So again, he's backlogging himself on every single question. So he never finishes the question he's being asked because he always wants to go back to the previous. As a strategy, maybe it's brilliant, but it's incredibly stupid, incredibly annoying, and incredibly transparent way of avoiding what he's supposed to be answering. And he says, history records that Joe Biden opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. With regards to Judge Amy Coney Barrett, we particularly hope we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. The Democratic chairman of the Judiciary Committee expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. At this point, he was, intentionally making fun of the quote from, I think, Dianne Feinstein from California during a previous confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to a lower court.
Why is it that so many of us on this side have this very uncomfortable feeling that, dogma and law are two different things? And I think whatever a religion is, it has its own dogma. The law is totally different. And I think in your case, Professor, when you read your speeches, the conclusion one draws is that the dogma lives loudly within you. And that's of concern when you come to big issues that large numbers of people have fought for years in this country.
And I don't know. I think I saw something on Twitter earlier today that Dianne Feinstein was giving Lindsey Graham a hug.
I saw that. I could not believe it. It's not like, yeah. Ugh.
Really? I mean,
Ugh.
what is it with these? I mean,
first of all,
I'm not one to buy into the Republican talking point of the coastal elites, out of touch shit. But honestly, with people like Dianne Feinstein, I mean, can we not do this?
Yeah.
These people are your freaking enemies. Can we act like that?
Mm-hmm.
They're corrupt, they're incompetent, they're criminals, and, you know, can we not give them talking points in a confirmation hearing where you talk about something like the dogma of her faith lives loudly in her? That is a weird thing to say. Like, I know she's referencing something that comes from some organization she's a member of or whatever, but it's like, it looks like you're attacking her for her religion. It sounds bizarre.
Yeah.
And it gives Mike Pence a talking point in this point in the debate.
It's insane. Yeah, I'm trying to. I know other people pointed this out, but I'm trying to think of the time when a Muslim person would be lauded by the right for their strong faith values, and I'm also wondering when that would ever when they would ever be paid the compliment of having seven children and a robust American family, or whatever Mike Pence said. If it was like a black woman, you know what I mean? It's like I'm just trying to switch the scenarios here and try to imagine that ever passing through their lips, and it's just impossible, you know. So it's totally ridiculous. And also,
I mean,
going back to what you're saying with the go on.
I mean, people are talking about Obama with the Muslim Brotherhood or something.
Yeah.
Because even though he's a Christian, his like middle name is Hussein, and so you know, I mean, again, you just, I mean, I'm not saying that we would be good debate moderators, but like, to let these things go unanswered when this is the level of hypocrisy, and you know, and the fact that both sides, you know, I mean, to some degree, religion is important on the Supreme Court. Like something like, what is it, 6 or 7 out of 9 of the Supreme Court justices are Catholics. That's weird in a country that is not majority Catholic. Like, I'm sorry.
Yes,
right?
Very strange.
I mean, you know, it's another question. It's a further question whether or not their faith influences their stuff, and that's a whole other thing with the separation of church and state. But it's very clearly like that the Federalist Society is trying to get Catholics to some degree on the thing, or at least far right wing people, because they know that their religion is going to prevent them from really wavering on Roe versus Wade, those kinds of issues, right? I mean, like this is they're using the religion, they're using, you know, indoctrination, membership into the Federalist Society or whatever, this think tank that, you know, pumps out conservative justices and stuff. Like, I mean, but at the same time, like, I mean, there's a lot of ways to be a Muslim, and they don't all involve instituting Sharia law in America. And yet you'd never know that to hear it from Republicans. When you talk about, like, you know, the squad, you know, you talk about people on the squad, you talk about Obama, who's not even a Muslim. I mean, like, so they, you know, like they dealt the race card from the bottom of the deck. They've been dealing the religion card from the bottom of the deck. So it's rich to hear them pretending to care about religious discrimination when it comes to Catholics, especially when the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden, is a practicing Catholic. You know?
Don't ever talk about that. Yeah. And the current Pope doesn't even think that whatever Trump is a Christian or whatever he said. You know what I mean? So it's like, if we're talking about the current leadership of the Catholic Church, which, you know, there's a whole faction that doesn't believe he's the legitimate Pope. Yeah.
They still want to be Catholics, but they don't want to follow this Pope. So okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. So again, I don't know what the response to that was. There was some response to it, but again, he's gone way off topic here, and he's brought up 2 or 3 topics from the previous topic, and he's made some very bad faith arguments and so forth. Let's see. There's a question at that point. There's a question about pre-existing conditions, and Pence ignores the question about how Trump has never figured out a way to protect pre-existing conditions, even though he's been promising since like 2015 that he would. And now he goes back to abortion again. He says, because again, this was the previous question. She asked him, "What about abortion in Indiana if Roe versus Wade is overturned?" And he goes, "Now, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life." Okay. This is a lie. I mean, the entire reason you guys are pushing Amy Coney Barrett is because you do presume how she will rule on the Supreme Court. That's the entire reason that you are ignoring coronavirus money going out to people to push her right now, because this is your last chance to get her on the court to do rulings on this stuff, to, quote unquote, stand strong for the right to life. At this point, Mike Pence conspicuously assumes an aggressive tone and posture, and he turns to Kamala and he says, "When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris."
Gosh.
And he bites his lip. "Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed?" And he looks down and away like he's uncomfortable to confront her this directly. And he said, "Which has had 9 seats for 150 years. And I'm thinking, lol, come on, what about 2015?
Yeah, when it had 8.
An entire year there where it was down to 8 seats, and you Republicans kept it that way. Fuck off."
Yeah.
He said, "Are you and Joe Biden, if you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?" He remembers that he's asked them if they're going to do this, and the only way they're going to do this is if they beat his boss in a month. And so he's like, he has to throw that in there. "If you win, are you going to pack the court? Are you going to pack the court? If you win if you win, are you going to pack the court? It's like, so you can get your way." Kamala Harris gives a history lesson about Abraham Lincoln declined a seat, a Supreme Court justice 27 days before his election, in a situation that was very similar to this one. And Mike Pence goes, and he's answering for her now. He says, "The answer is that they will pack the court if they win." He kind of adds.
What do you think about this controversy, or made up controversy?
Which one?
The fact that they won't give a straight answer about expanding the Supreme Court.
What I wanted Kamala to say here kind of was "fuck around and find out," which is what Bernie voters said when they were asked, "Are you guys going to fall in line behind Joe Biden? Fuck around and find out." Yeah, keep playing these games, keep trying to get our guy out in illegitimate ways, and you'll find out. Yep. But she's not going to say that, right?
No, probably not.
Because then that's the and I. Okay, I have 2 minds on this. Number one, I think they should. I think they should say it. I think they should be willing to do it. On the other hand, it's a controversial thing, and if they do say that during the debate, that becomes the major talking point coming out of the debate, is that they admitted this thing. Republicans are going to jump all over media. The media is going to play along and make this a big deal. I don't know. But so from that perspective, I think it's smart for them not to mention it. On the other hand, my other worry is that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and many other Democrats actually want to do it. They don't have the stomach to actually do it.
I think Joe Biden said as much in previous times. I know that Kamala Harris has said the opposite, but she's definitely tempered her view, at least in public, since she joined the ticket. So
yeah, let's see what happens after their first year or two. If they get a bunch of rulings from the Supreme Court that don't go their way. Let's see if they still feel the same way. I think they should just do it from day one, so that there's no controversy. It's like, no, you guys stole. You stole 3 seats here, basically.
Right.
You want to talk about packing courts. You guys filibustered 1 seat illegitimately, considering the duties of the Senate, which we've talked about before. And you stole that seat, and then you had another guy step down so you could replace him with a younger version, more conservative version.
And his son works at Deutsche Bank, which holds a lot of Trump's loans. Go on.
And the third person, a dying woman's wish not to be replaced until after the election. You guys rammed through somebody behind, but less than a month before the election, when previously, just 4 years ago, you said you couldn't seat somebody over a year before the election because it was too close to the damn election.
But see, the thing that
you guys
Mitch
are
McConnell
packing,
says.
if anybody's packing the cords, it's the
Yeah.
Republicans. You know?
But see, Mitch McConnell says that the reason that that's not hypocrisy is that in power as opposed to the one in the White House and the Senate. So now it's different since they're both Republicans, so it's fine. So there's no hypocrisy here, Shaw.
Yeah, we'll see how many seats of government they hold after this, as far as the three parts of government. Let's see what they, okay, you got the Supreme Court if you can keep it. We'll see how you're doing in the Senate, the Congress, and the White House after this. And maybe I'll be wrong, but I have a feeling you guys are gonna get a comeuppance here very shortly. And at a certain point, I made a note here on this thing that I think, again, another criticism I have of the debate format is that it makes everybody competing for time. Right? I said the format of just fill up as much time as possible and try to take more than the other guy is remarkably dysfunctional. I said in some cases, like I think a simple yes or no answer and just relinquish the rest of your time would be more effective.
Mm-hmm.
But they will never, ever do that, right? Sometimes, like, Kamala Harris, will you do this if you're the president? Yes. Next question. Asked and answered. Good. Finished, right? That would actually be more effective than yes, and here's why. Da 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 da. It would actually be, like when you're writing. To be a good writer, I think like you don't just write short, succinct sentences, and you don't just write long, drawn out, complicated, complex sentences. You variate it a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Variate may or may not be a word.
And you make up new words along the way.
It should be a mixture of long and short sentences when you're writing. That's what makes for compelling and readable and interesting and engaging thing to read. And I think like sometimes you don't need to talk a lot. You just say yes or no. You say it boldly. You let it stand on its own merits, and that speaks louder than trying to eat up your entire 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But because this is the kind of debating we have, nobody ever does that. And sometimes I think they should.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think if one person started doing it in a debate and it was effective, I think the other person might actually start copying them. They might realize, okay, this person is not just trying to eat up time. They're actually, at some points, they're just giving a definitive answer and letting it stand. And okay, I guess I've got 2 minutes or maybe 3.5 minutes now if I wanted, but it would actually behoove me to actually just answer shortly. I think our next topic was, and this may be topic number 6, was racial justice.
Mm-hmm.
In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require a national registry for police officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and we will decriminalize marijuana, and we will expunge the records of those who have been convicted of marijuana. This is a time for leadership on a tragic issue of unarmed Black people in America who have been killed.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. It was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. Look, we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African-American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and that is improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice President
Record unemployment, record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our minorities.
Thank you, Vice President.
I'd like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges for taking advantage of our veterans. And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. On the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting, the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed. And on the other side, there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the president of the United States. And America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country together.
Senator Harris.
And recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have so much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did, comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the American people. But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney General of California, you increased the disproportionate incarceration of blacks in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record speaks for itself. President Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President
We fought
Pence.
for educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our members.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll do it for 4 more
Thank you.
years.
You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
I appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holes.
Thank you.
Not only.
Thank you, Senator
I
Harris.
would like to go through.
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
But I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President on our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself.
Kamala Harris says, in Breonna Taylor's case, justice was not done. Bad cops are bad for good cops. Talked about banning chokeholds, a national registry for cops who break the law, eliminate private prisons. I think that's something I want to hear.
It's a winning issue for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think eliminate cash bail, decriminalize marijuana, and expunge the records of those with marijuana convictions. Which again, this is one of those issues that I think a lot of Bernie-crats would have loved to have heard about many, many months ago when Bernie dropped out and everybody was mad as hell. You know, if we had known that Biden was going to come along on some of these issues, you know, okay, decriminalizing, that's not legalizing, but it's a step in the right direction. And, you know,
Do you want me to get something out for you?
Kind of like, don't ask, don't tell wasn't gay marriage, but it was a step in the direction towards eventual gay marriage, right? Like it's, these are things that, like, why am I hearing about these in a vice presidential debate a month before the election? That's what I want to know,
Yeah.
And hopefully some of our listeners, if they haven't heard the debate and they haven't heard about these issues, hopefully they're hearing about them from us, and they are prepared to act on the knowledge. But
it's kind of a shame
again,
we're having
I think
to
the
do the
Biden
work.
campaign's messaging.
Yeah. The campaign should be doing this work, not us. Like we shouldn't be hearing about this for the first time now.
Yeah, I mean, there should be people from the campaign going on the news and talking about these things, but they're not, because it's a national crisis right now, and everybody spends most of their day worrying about what Donald Trump is tweeting or whatever, or whether his own incompetence has gotten him in COVID-19, and how irresponsible is he? And so they go on, Morning Joe, and talk about those issues or whatever. They're not talking about their own issues.
Absolutely.
Even when the issues would be big vote movers for a lot of people, I think.
I'm fine with this.
And okay, so this is where Mike Pence gets to. This is where the kind of the disingenuous of this kind of a right winger comes across, right? And I think that this is how you become a Republican politician. You hold all the same, disgusting views on all this stuff that every other Republican does, but you're able to throw a bone to the rhetorical style that says that what happened to these black people was a tragedy, in fact, before you go in about how you don't care about the protesters and Antifa, you just want to support the police. He says, well, our heart breaks for Breonna Taylor's family. He says, I trust our justice system. There's no excuse for rioting or looting. And he mentions he brought along some salon owner, and her salon was burned down or something in the protests. And I think it's at this point at 1 minute or 1 hour 27 minutes and 38 seconds on my file, where the fly finally alights on Mike Pence's head.
Okay, see, I wasn't watching close enough to see this moment happen, but you just this happened. What was the timestamp again?
1 hour 27 minutes and 38 seconds.
So it was right near the end, huh?
Yeah, okay. It came pretty late.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it was bizarre. I've heard differing reports. I noticed it. It wasn't there, and then it was there, and I backed it up a couple times just trying to find the exact second where it happened, and so that's where it happened. And I meant to go back and see how long it stayed, because I've heard some people say it stayed for 2 minutes and some people say it stayed for 4 minutes, so I don't actually know when it left his head.
I heard 2 minutes, and I heard that Kamala also noticed it.
That's the other thing. I was trying to see if she could notice it, because I
heard someone say, I'll have to go back and watch that moment again, because I was mostly just listening to it, so I didn't really get the visual on this.
Well, on Mike Pence's white as snow hair, it really does. It's very conspicuous. But the thing is, I think it's possible that the debate moderator herself, because she's kind of down into the front of him, and he's turning to his right a little bit to face Kamala, and the fly is on the top right front part of his hair. So I'm not sure that the debate moderator could have seen it, or necessarily that she would have said anything if she had seen it. I don't know.
Yeah, what are you going to say? I mean,
yeah, that's like kind of a really awkward moment in a live debate. Sir, it's, Republicans would probably scream that she made him look bad or something, but it's like,
yeah,
if you can get the fly off your head and it's not sitting there like the disgusting booger or whatever on Tom Cruise, or what's his name? Ted Cruz's mouth, or what, his nose really licked up with his loser tongue.
Ew.
The other debate.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It was so gross.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not like if it doesn't turn into a situation like that, I mean, I don't know. So that happened while he was talking about respecting law enforcement, that the fly landed. So let's see. The fly lights on his head, and supposedly it stays there for a couple minutes. Harris says, I will not sit here and be lectured by the vice president on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. We are talking about an election in 27 days where last week the president took a debate stage in front of 70 million people and refused to condemn white supremacists. And Mike Pence, not true, not true. And she's continuing, and it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down, and then he said, when pressed, stand back and stand by. And this is part of a pattern. Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers, the Muslim ban, Charlottesville, and he said fine people were on both sides, and so forth. And at this point, I think Mike Pence got 1 minute to respond, and he overtalked his time again. And then he said, "This is why the American people hate the media. You've both selectively edited what Trump said. You've both selectively edited what Trump and I and people on our side of the aisle have said." He said, Trump's grandchildren are Jewish. How can he be an anti-Semite? It's like, I don't know, but he manages it. And at that point, I think that there were supposed to be 6 topics, but we come to the 7th, which is the election itself.
President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as vice president? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military, we revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last 4 years. But when you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. It's amazing. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. And we have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
A question that maybe shouldn't have to be asked, but it does in this case. Kamala Harris said, we have a broad coalition, including, of course, Democrats, many independents, and many Republicans. Please vote. Mike Pence said, the FBI spied on the Trump campaign in 2016, which is bullshit. They were looking at members of the Trump campaign who were in contact with Russians.
Yeah, don't be in contact with Russians, and no one will investigate you.
Yeah, like I think they were watching Carter Page since before he was part of the Trump campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Then he became part of the Trump campaign, and they continued watching him. Right? That's the scandal. As far as I know, right? I mean, like this is the Obama gate or whatever that he always talks about. He says, you tried to impeach the president over a phone call. Hillary Clinton recently told Joe Biden that under no circumstances should he concede this election. And he shouldn't. If the election of the year 2000 taught us anything, it's, give the vote counting a chance. Do not preemptively surrender. My God, smart. Yeah. Okay, and then finally, I think the last thing that Harris talked about, one of the reasons why Joe decided to run is because after Charlottesville, it so troubled him, as it did all of us. And I'm just thinking, like, oh, come on.
I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, when I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along? And then she added, your examples could make all the difference to bring us together, end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. And in America, we believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. But I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States, one very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the 2 of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument, but we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you,
in
Vice
times
President.
of need. And we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him, like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. You have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has known love. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your work and through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall-style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us then. Good evening.
After Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, Joe Biden running for president was a foregone conclusion. He didn't decide after Charlottesville to run for president. Come on. It's a nice thing to say. It's a nice thought.
But yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Not true.
Yeah, I mean, okay, whatever. Anyways, thus concludes my notes, Bob. That's 7 pages of the vice president 2020 vice presidential debate.
Gotta say, it was not the knockout punch I had expected and hoped for, and I think that Mike Pence is slipperier than I gave him credit for, and I don't think Kamala exactly followed up the way she should have sometimes, and I think she let the old side eye and the I'm talking do more of the work than actually verbally body slamming him for shilling for the Trump administration. But it's I don't know.
I mean, to be fair to her, I don't know what kind of restrictions were put on her by the Joe Biden campaign.
Sure, they probably muzzled her a little bit.
I don't know if he told her there's an argument to be made.
She's so good in those Senate hearings with nailing people down and asking the same question over and over again and not letting people wiggle away that I was a little surprised that happened this time. So yeah, maybe they did get in her ear about that. So
I mean, the number one thing that I was excited about, aside from the fact that there's a huge debate as to how left-wing she actually is. Some people think she's the most liberal senator. Other people think she's like a jackbooted thug police officer from California or some, I don't know, maybe the truth somewhere in the middle. But the thing that when she was announced as the vice presidential pick, the thing that I was most positive about her being the vice presidential pick was that she has a great, prosecutorial vibe in the Senate, and she could, she could really prosecute the case in the debate. And I'm sorry to say, for whatever reason, we didn't really see that this time. And we know she can do it in a debate because we've seen her do it to her boss, Joe Biden, right now. You know, we saw her just absolutely take him to task at one point in a very uncomfortable, aggressive, and controlled way. I mean, like, that was the thing that I was really wanting to see, and I didn't see it. That doesn't mean that Mike Pence won the debate. You know, he's full of shit, but and to be absolutely 100% totally fair to Mike Pence, he is defending the most disastrous administration in probably entire American history. I mean, he doesn't have a lot to defend. So, I mean, congratulations to him, I guess, for at least having a word of a response for every single thing she said, even if it was bullshit or he didn't have any facts to back it up or whatever at certain points.
Right.
So, but, you know, by not losing, I'm not one of the people that subscribes to the thought that means that he won. So we'll see what happens in the election in less than 3 weeks here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that this moved any needles, nor did the last debate, really. I feel like everyone who came into it with one opinion probably left with the same opinion. I don't really know if anybody was swayed.
No, I definitely, I don't know if they're swayed enough to vote, but I definitely saw some Trump supporters on Facebook that were like, look, I like Trump, but he was fucking crazy at that debate, like, and not in a good way.
Right.
So I definitely saw some Trump supporters like that, but
do you think that the evangelicals or whatever have enough cover once and again with Pence to pull the lever, or is it because I know that was the reason that he was initially picked or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think when I think about evangelical voters, largely I think about elderly voters, older voters, retirees, and so forth, an aging generation.
Yeah, they're not all.
I think the aging generation is being decimated by COVID-19 right now.
Yeah.
And
Joe
so
Biden's
I think the combination,
well
the 1-2 punch of Donald Trump's debate performance being described as a crackhead last time, and him immediately catching COVID or having already had COVID at the debate, I think that was kind of piercing the chink in his armor here. That no, this guy is not an invincible strongman. He's an incompetent who can't even protect his own administration or people around him.
Right.
And, you know, for people who maybe don't pay attention to the news very often and they don't actually see Donald Trump behaving the way he does day to day, to see his behavior suddenly in the debate like that, it was probably a little bit of a wake-up call for some people. Again, I don't know how many people that changes, but I think the combination of those two things is probably the death knell for his chances.
Yeah, I saw even Ben Sass was on town hall with people in his state, and like he basically said that there's no way he's gonna win or something.
Yeah.
Hello. Thanks, Senator. I think, like a lot of Nebraskans, I'm trying to understand your relationship with the president. Why do you have to criticize him so much?
Sure. So that is a very fair question, and I guess I kind of think about it like this. I think we should distinguish between policy agreement and policy disagreement, and then also long-term political implications as well. So I've worked hard to develop a good working relationship with the president over the last 3.5 years. I obviously campaigned for a lot of other people in the 2016 cycle, but Donald Trump is our president now, so I've worked hard to develop a good relationship with him. He's got a hard job, and we're called to pray for our leaders, so that's what we do regularly at the breakfast table at our house, is we pray for the president and the First Lady and for Vice President Pence in their callings. And there are obviously a number of issue areas where President Trump and I have policy alignment now, or maybe a better way to put it is where the president has now adopted traditionally Republican positions that he used to reject for the majority of his life when he was funding Democratic candidates. So, for example, one of the places where he's changed, as we were just mentioning to the last questioner, is I think he's nominated truly great judges, and I've worked with him on that. In fact, I went on the Judiciary Committee after he was elected explicitly to advocate for the kind of originalists and constitutionalists that he had put on his list and that he had agreed to nominate. I'm the first Nebraskan on the Judiciary Committee in, I think, 46 years. I'm 48 years old, and I'm the first Nebraskan on the committee since the mid-'70s. So there are definitely places where we agree. But as your question says, there are obviously a lot of places where he and I differ as well. And these aren't just mere policy issues. I'm not at all apologetic for having fought for my values against his in places where I think his are deficient, not just for a Republican, but for an American. So the way he kisses dictators' butts, the way he ignores that the Uyghurs are in literal concentration camps in Xinjiang right now. He hasn't lifted a finger on behalf of the Hong Kongers. He and I have a very different foreign policy. It isn't just that he fails to lead our allies, it's that the United States now regularly sells out our allies under his leadership. The way he treats women and spends like a drunken sailor, the ways I criticize President Obama for that kind of spending, I criticize President Trump for as well. He mocks evangelicals behind closed doors. His family has treated the presidency like a business opportunity. He's flirted with white supremacists. The places where we differed on COVID, at the beginning of the COVID crisis, he refused to treat it seriously for months. He treated it like a news cycle by news cycle PR crisis rather than a multi-year public health challenge, which is what it is. And now, in his partial defense here, I think that lots of the news media has pretended that COVID is literally the first public health crisis ever, and somehow it's Donald Trump's fault. That's not true. They just wanted to use it against him. But the reality is that he careened from curb to curb. First, he ignored COVID, and then he went into full economic shutdown mode. He was the one who said 10 to 14 days of shutdown would fix this, and that was always wrong. And so I don't think the way he's led through COVID has been reasonable or responsible or right. And so these are some of the important policy or sort of leadership places where we differ, stuff we don't see eye to eye on. And I think that it's my duty to level with Nebraskans, even though I recognize that a lot of our voters in Nebraska are Trumpier than I am, and they sometimes get frustrated with me. But I also think voters have told me the most common thing I hear from Nebraskans is they have a very mixed perspective on the president. They think he does some stuff well, and they think he does some stuff poorly. And the truth of the matter is, I think he's done some stuff well and some poorly, and so I've been honest about that. But those are kind of policy and leadership issues. I think it's also worth, for those of us who care about the party of Lincoln and Reagan, we should distinguish between policy and politics, because my dissents from President Trump are not only about policy, but it's also a prudential question or a political question about whether or not he's ultimately driving the country further to the left, because that's what I think is ultimately going to happen because of Donald Trump. This has been my fear for 5 years. It's why I campaigned for everybody not named Trump in 2016. And that is because I think folks have regularly misunderstood the meaning of 2016. Donald Trump didn't win the presidency because America actually wants more reality TV, round-the-clock, stupid political obsessions. I just don't think that that's what my neighbors want. It's not what I hear when I travel the state. I've spent lots of the last year on a campaign bus, and when you listen to Nebraskans, they don't really want more rage tweeting as a new form of entertainment. I think the overwhelming reason that President Trump won in 2016 was simply because Hillary Clinton was literally the most unpopular candidate in the history of polling. We've had polls going back about 85 years, and Hillary Clinton is by far the worst presidential candidate America has ever had. General election presidential candidate. And I think that's why President Trump won, not because he laid out a constructive vision of the country that Americans united around. And so I think it's always been imprudent for my party, again, as I mentioned, calling it the party of Lincoln and Reagan. Those are the heights of American history. It has always been imprudent for our party to try to tie itself to a Trumpian brand, and that's what I've been worried about for 5 years. And so for months, as I've been campaigning over the end of 2019 and all of 2020 again, I've been straight with Nebraskans that I'm worried that if President Trump loses, as looks likely, that he's going to take the Senate down with him. And if conservatives lose the Senate, here's what progressives are going to try to do. They're going to fracture the deliberative structure of the Senate. That's what blowing up the filibuster means. And that's the whole ballgame. They're going to add states. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. And that puts religious liberty and the broader First Amendment at risk. And that's the heart of who we are as Americans, is people who understand that government doesn't give us our rights. God gives us our rights via nature, and government is just our shared project to secure those things. And Donald Trump doesn't steward that. He doesn't do storytelling to the next generation. And now Senate Democrats, if they get to a supermajority that they can end the filibuster, I'm worried that some of the most, terrible nuttiness that we see happening on campus will get imported into our jurisprudence, and that would be a terrible remaking of America. And so, from where I sit as one of the most conservative guys in the U.S. Senate, I'm now looking at the possibility of a Republican bloodbath in the Senate, and that's why I've never been on the Trump train. It's why I didn't agree to serve on his reelection committee, and it's why I'm not campaigning for him, because I spend all my time thinking about the one political question that's most central next month, which is holding the U.S. Senate. If we don't, I'll pull up and get back to questions here, Tyler. But I just think if we don't retain the Senate, there's a very good chance that 10 years from now, we're going to have a Venezuela-like, dozens of members of the Supreme Court. You can imagine 30, 40 people on the Supreme Court at some point. And when all of our allies in the Pacific have sided with China because Trump's isolationism was so weak, that our allies began to doubt for the first time since World War II whether they could trust in U.S. strength and U.S. will and U.S. courage and U.S. virtue and values. If young people become permanent Democrats because they've just been repulsed by the obsessive nature of our politics, or if women who were willing to still vote with the Republican Party on 2016 decide that they need to turn away from this party permanently in the future, the debate is not going to be, Ben Sass, why were you so mean to Donald Trump? It's going to be, what the heck were any of us thinking that selling a TV-obsessed, narcissistic individual to the American people was a good idea? It is not a good idea. I think we are staring down the barrel of a blue tsunami, and we've got to hold the Senate, and so that's what I'm focused on. I'm not focused on Donald Trump. I think the media has done a terrible job of making us all believe that the presidency is always the most important thing for people to talk about. First of all, politics shouldn't be the center of our conversation or our life or our culture or our economics, but even inside politics, the presidency shouldn't be the center of that. And I think that Donald Trump and the media are united in wanting to make him the center of every conversation. And I think overwhelmingly the most important political issue we face right now is whether or not Republicans can retain it. And so that's what I'm spending my time and energy on. Thanks for your question. Tyler, who's next?
Yeah, I think I saw that 538 now has the chances of Trump winning at like 14%.
Yeah, it's very low.
So, yeah. Yeah.
And the early voting numbers are insane. I got my ballot that Ash and I filled out our ballots last night. We're going to go turn those in today. So I'll also have to see how long the lines are here locally. But I've heard the numbers are way, way up all over. So that's probably a good sign, I would think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I've got my ballot too. I've got it mostly filled out. I've just got to figure out a couple more of the, the local, the school board seats or the
I didn't really
mess
with all that. Yeah, I didn't really mess with all that, honestly.
Yeah, in Lawrence County, it's pretty much all Republicans anyways. It almost doesn't even matter, but
right.
Yeah, frankly, any place on the ballot where there was no Democratic challenger, I left it blank because, I want there to be a discrepancy between the number of votes cast and the number that actually went to support the Republican unchallenged incumbent for the position, so that they
absolutely.
say, yeah, there's a lot of people out there who, even when they don't have an option, they're not going to vote for me.
Exactly.
So, but once I figure out the school board or whatever the last item on the list is, where it's like there's 6 or 7 members, the thing's going in, and it's going to be done within the next week here.
Good. We'll be back in plenty of time then, I would hope. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's a pretty quick process what I do with the board there. It's a matter of I don't know, you scan some things, you scan some documents, you scan some legal documents, so on and so forth, and then it's just a matter of transmitting the file over the internet, as long as you scan it and you sign things and you let them know exactly who you are and stuff. You're in contact with them. So I don't think it's that easy necessarily everywhere, and I'm kind of surprised it's that simple in Lawrence County, but yeah, it's kind of high tech and all.
Well, good.
Yep. So anyways, I don't know. Bob, did you have any more thoughts about the vice presidential debate? I know I kind of just rambled a lot there, but
no, I think you covered most of it. what do you think of this being the last thing voters think about before they go in if there aren't any more debates? I kind of hope, like you said, I hope there's not. I hope this is the end. I don't really think we need to see anything else from anybody at the top of the ticket to make a decision. I wouldn't think so.
I'd like to see one more debate if and only if they cut mics.
Virtual debate, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to see Donald Trump stew if his mic gets cut.
Raven on mute. That would be so good.
That would be so awesome, and it's necessary, really. But so if they were to do something like that, not that he would really agree to it necessarily, most likely, but that's the only way I'd really want to see another debate. But but I mean, there's almost no need for the debates. If the debates hadn't been held this year, the voters already know most of what they need to know.
Yeah,
this presidency is responsible for the largest loss of American life in probably a century, as far as a sudden preventable cause. I'm not talking about like cancer or car accidents or something that's pretty much factored into day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And they've destroyed the economy with the response. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how many jobless people are there in America right now? How many people have like 8% unemployment or something right now? I mean, South Korea's got high unemployment right now too from this, but shutdowns, things like that. I mean, restaurants are still open, bars are still open, things are still open. People are still out on the streets. It's like the economy has to be in better shape here than it is back in America as far as activity, economic activity, consumption, disposable income. For many people.
Yeah. That's such a mind blower that's like that over there. It's just so different here.
Yeah. It's, I mean, and they've been holding it down to, they've held it for most of the last week to less than 100 new cases per day nationwide. Yeah. I see America, 40,000, 50,000, 60 some thousand today per day.
Yeah.
Total insanity. In a way, I can't even imagine what it's like back there.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's 12.6 million in September out of work, 7.9% unemployment.
Okay.
Latest figures.
Yeah, and you talk about people, even before all this stuff happened, there's those statistics out there, those horrific statistics about X percentage of Americans, if they had an emergency next month, would not have enough money on hand to. They've got like $300, less than $400 in the bank.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And those people, and maybe they got $1,200 like 6 months ago or whatever, maybe. And what did they do with that? It doesn't last 6 months. I guarantee you that. It doesn't last 6 months anywhere.
No, absolutely not. And they're still dithering on a new plan. And I don't know. Pelosi might let it run out the clock because she probably didn't want to give them the win. But a lot of people are going to get hurt if that happens, which I'm not thrilled.
I know. I saw her earlier this morning. I watched her on with Wolf Blitzer.
As you know, there are Americans who are being evicted from their homes. They can't pay the rent. Many Americans are waiting in food lines for the first time in their lives. Can you look them in the eye, Madam Speaker, and explain why you don't want to accept the president's latest stimulus offer?
Well, because, thank you very much, Wolf, and I hope you'll ask the same question of the Republicans about why they don't really want to meet the needs of the American people. But let me say to those people, because all of my colleagues, we represent these people. I have for over 30 years represented my constituents. I know what their needs are. I listen to them, and their needs are not addressed in the president's proposal. So when you say to me, why don't you accept theirs? Why don't they accept ours? Our legislation is there to do three things primarily: to honor our workers, honor our heroes, our healthcare workers, our police and fire first responders, our teachers, our transportation, sanitation, food workers, the people who make our lives work. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without them. Many of them have risked their lives so that to save lives, and now they will lose their jobs because Mitch McConnell says let the states go bankrupt.
Excuse me for interrupting,
let the states go bankrupt.
Madam Speaker, but they really need the money right now, and even members of your own.
I understand that, but
but even members of your own caucus. even members of your own caucus, Madam Speaker, want to accept this deal. $1.8 trillion. Congressman Ro Khanna, for example. But let me just quote Ro Khanna, a man you know well. I assume you admire him. He's a Democrat. And he just said this. He said, people in need can't wait until February. $1.8 trillion is significant and more than twice the Obama stimulus. Make a deal. Put the ball in McConnell court. So what do you say to Ro Khanna?
What I say to you is, I don't know why you're always an apologist, and many of your colleagues apologists for the Republican position. Ro Khanna, that's nice. That isn't what we're going to do, and nobody's waiting till February. I want this very much now, because people need help now. But it's no use giving them a false thing just because the president wants to put a check with his name on it in the mail, that we should not be doing all we can to help people pay the rent, put food on the table, to enhance benefits, that they don't lose their jobs if they're state and local, we're talking about the consequences of a pandemic, that the symptoms of a problem that the president refuses to address.
But you know,
and that is the coronavirus.
We know
that is the coronavirus.
The problem out there, but there are millions of Americans who have lost their jobs. They can't pay the rent. Their kids need the food.
That's right, and that's what we're trying to get done.
$1.8 trillion, and the president just tweeted, stimulus, go big or go home. He wants even more right now, so why not work out a deal with him, and don't let the perfect, as they say here in Washington, be the enemy of the good.
Well, I will not let the wrong be the enemy of the right.
What's wrong with $1.8 trillion?
Well, you know what? Do you have any idea what the difference is between the spending that they have in their bill and that we have in our bill? Do you realize that they have come back and said all these things for child tax credits and earned income tax credits, for helping people who have lost their jobs, are eliminated in their bill? Do you realize they pay no respect to the fact that child care is very important for people whose children cannot go to school because they're doing remote learning, and yet they minimize the need for child care, which is the threshold with which people, mothers and fathers, can go to work if they have that? Do you have any idea of how
That's precisely why, Madam Speaker,
short they're concerned?
That's why it's so important right now. Yesterday I spoke to Andrew Yang, who says the same thing. It's not everything you want,
but you know
but there's a lot there.
Honest to God, you really, I can't get over it, because Andrew Yang, he's lovely. Ro Khanna, he's lovely. They are not negotiating this situation. They have no idea of the particulars. They have no idea of what the language is here. I didn't come over here to have, so you're the apologist for the Obama, excuse me. God forbid.
Madam Speaker, I'm not an apologist. I'm asking you serious questions because so many people are in desperate need right now. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
When was the last time?
Let me respond to you.
Let me ask you, when was the last time, Madam Speaker, when was the last time you spoke with the president about this?
I don't speak to the president. Speak with his representative.
Why not call him and say, Mr. President, let's work out a deal. It's not going to be everything you want, not going to be everything I want, but there are so many Americans right now who are in desperate need. Let's make a deal.
What makes me amused, if it weren't so sad, is how you all think that you know more about the suffering of the American people than those of us who are elected by them to represent them at that table. It is unfortunate that we do not have shared values with this White House, and that they have in their bill, why don't you talk about in their bill, a tax break for the wealthiest families in the country, while they cut out the earned income tax credit for the poorest families in our country and the poorest children in our country. That we have to fight with them to get them to address the coronavirus crisis, because they have said it was a hoax, it was magical, it was a miracle, it was going to cure it. It hasn't. And that's why we find ourselves in this situation. I feel very confident about the knowledge that I bring to this, but more importantly, the knowledge that my chairs, our chairs of jurisdiction, science-based, academically documented, institutionally suggested in terms of what the cost would be to do it, and to do it that way. And about, we talk about child care, yes. We talk about safety in the workplace. safety in the workplace. That's a very important issue, especially in the time of the pandemic. So what I say to those people is, we're going to get a deal. And when we do, it will be retroactive. It will be retroactive.
Here's what you wrote in a letter to House Democrats, Madam Speaker, and I ask these questions only, as you know, so many millions of Americans are suffering right now.
Well, you quote two people who know nothing about the agreement. There is no agreement, but what the suggestions are, as if there's some authority on the subject. Please give equal weight to to all of the chairmen on the committee who have written this bill.
But so many of your fellow Democrats in the House, they want a deal right now.
No, that isn't.
The problem solvers, they all want a deal right now.
Yeah.
And here's what they're complaining about, because you wrote a letter to House Democrats and you said this. Let me read a line from the letter you wrote. The president only wants his name on a check to go out before Election Day and for the market to go up. Is that what this is all about? Not allow the president to take credit if there's a deal that will help millions of Americans right now?
He's not that important. But let me say this. With all due respect, and you know we've known each other a long time, you really don't know what you're talking about. If the plural of anecdote is not data. Yes, there's some people who said this or that. Overwhelmingly, my caucus wants what is right for the American people. Overwhelmingly, our chairman who wrote the bill, read their statements. They all put out their own statements when they saw what the White House was proposing. So do a service to the issue and have some level of respect for the people who have worked on these issues, written the bill to begin with. Now, let me just say this in terms of the numbers. I want people to do the math. We had 3.4, which would meet the needs of the American people for a sustained period of time, so that there was some certainty in what would happen. The Republicans said no, well, so we took it down $1 trillion by cutting the time. We took it down another $200 billion. So we're now $1.200 billion down. We came down to 2.2. At the same time, since tomorrow will be 5 months since we passed the bill, at the same time, because there was no resolution, Mitch McConnell said, let's pause. The virus didn't pause, and now we're at a place where we need more money. We need more money for PPP, for our small businesses. We need more money for our airlines. We need more money for our schools. So we have absorbed nearly $500 billion more of expenses still within the 2.2.
I understand all of that, and I have only the greatest respect for you.
So do the math.
Madam Speaker, I have only the greatest respect for you.
We have come down $1.6 trillion.
$1.8 trillion. $1.8 trillion is a lot of money. The American people need that money ASAP because they're suffering right now. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying...
And you don't care how it's spent.
I care, of course, how it's spent. But what I don't understand is why not talk to the president personally, call him up and say, Mr. President, let's get a deal tomorrow.
Look, let me say this. The president has sent Mr. Mnuchin to negotiate. That's what we've done with other presidents. This isn't unusual. With President Bush, we did this quite a bit because that's how you negotiate. And then you take it to the president. Mr. Mnuchin, I think he has integrity representing his position. May I finish, please? But he has integrity representing his position, but his position has no integrity. They do not share our values. Have a little respect for the fact that we know something about these subjects. And there's a big difference between Democrats and Republicans in whether they want to give a big tax cut to the wealthiest people in the country in their bill, in the CARES Act. We tried to take it out in this bill. Instead, they took out earned income tax credit, child tax credit, expanded health benefits to UI benefits to the extent that it was agreed to before.
Right.
So this is, I have every confidence in what and the arguments that we make because it's based on science and documentation. Our chairs know their stuff. They know what they're doing, with all due respect to the kind of people you were referencing. And I welcome their enthusiasm. I welcome their interest. I welcome their originality of their thinking. But the fact is, we have a responsibility to meet the needs of the American people in a retroactive way, so they're not at a total loss. They are at a loss because the president has ignored the virus. I wish he would spend time on the fact that if he had not ignored the virus, we wouldn't be in the position we're in, but we are. And let me say about that also, I hope that I'm pleased that these pharmaceutical companies are taking the responsible position to halt and hopefully then resume. Because we want the public to have confidence in whatever therapies or whatever vaccines come along, that they will take them.
Right.
And to people who say, well, I don't trust Trump on that, if we trust the Food and Drug Administration for what they are doing, the scientists there who've been working 24/7 for months and months and months, excellent science. The science should call the shot, and when they we should all trust it.
And let's hope they get more treatments. Let's hope they get a vaccine. And Madam Speaker,
Yes.
I certainly respect you, but I also respect Ro Khanna. I respect Andrew Yang. I respect members of the Democrats who are members of the problem solvers. They want a deal because so many people right now
Well,
are
the problem
suffering.
solvers, by the way, don't have any earned income tax credit or child tax credit in their proposal either. But let's not go
But it
into
doesn't-
that.
yeah,
You
we've
evidently
gone
do
through that.
not respect the chairman of the committees who wrote these bills.
I respect
and
all
I
of
wish
you.
you would respect the knowledge that goes into getting meeting the needs of the American people. But again, you've been on a jag defending the administration all this time with no knowledge of the difference between our two bills, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that to you in
All right,
person.
Madam Speaker,
virtually.
these are incredibly difficult times right now, and we'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for joining
we'll
us.
leave it on the vote that you are not right on this, Wolf, and I hate to say that to
All
you.
right.
But I feel confident about it, and I feel confident about my colleagues, and I feel confidence in my chairs.
And it's not about me. It's about millions of Americans who can't put food on the table, who can't pay the rent,
And
who are
we
having
represent
trouble,
them.
who
And we
are
represent
trouble
them.
getting
And
by
we
on
represent
these
them.
long food
And we
lines that we're
represent
seeing.
them.
I know
we
you
know
are.
them.
I'm just saying.
We represent them, and we know them.
As we
We
say,
know them. We represent them.
don't let the
Yes.
perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say
It is
here in
nowhere
Washington.
near perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Always the case, but we're not even close to the good.
All right, let's see what happens, because every day is critically, critically important.
Yeah, I heard about
kind of an alien versus predator situation there. No matter who wins, we lose. But you know, she did not come off well, and he was really sticking it to her on this and stuff. And I mean, to be fair to her, I mean, I do feel like the Democrats right now are perhaps necessarily a little bit in a holding pattern. In 3 weeks, Joe Biden's probably going to win. If they
but they're not going to get
right,
anything out of a lame duck Trump.
That's true, and that's going to delay any kind of help for another 3 or 4 months here till January.
Yeah.
But
February.
But, I mean, but Mitch McConnell has held up any more help for the past 7 months.
Yeah, but virus cases are just about to spike in the winter, even more than they are now.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's true. From what I understand, the bill that Donald Trump wanted.
It's my money and I want it now, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I get it, but.
At J.G. Wentworth, we say get cash now for your structured settlement.
J.G. Wentworth? Cash now?
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
J.G. Wentworth is right. It's my money and I need it now.
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 Oh, well, okay, but Bob, to phrase it a different way, if
and I even had
caved
another
on this
kid
issue,
since this last check came out, so I'd be getting more money.
See, Bob, personal greed is always the downfall of everyone in politics. More money for me. What about me? No, I get it. But okay, well, Bob, if she wanted 2.2 million won, or when we're talking about Korean money, she wanted $2.2 trillion stimulus or payout, right?
It came up to 1.8. That's pretty good.
1.8. From what I understand, and from what I've heard from somebody online, is that the bill also basically indemnifies all corporations and all companies that if they make their workers go back to work and their workers get sick because of it, they cannot be legally held responsible. And when you think about how many people have been forced to go back to work across the country, if nobody has any legal recourse, if they are forced to go back to work by companies that are getting bailed out by Trump, and and he wants them to go back to work, and they die, get sick and die and stuff like that, and then they cannot, the Republicans are anti-life. It's like they
pro-birth, anti-life.
yeah, they. I mean, if you think about it, like that, they're fucking up pre-existing conditions. They don't want people to get covered for pre-existing conditions. They pay lip service to it, but they don't actually do it. COVID-19 is going to be a massive pre-existing condition for a lot of people.
Yep.
They want you to go back to work, but if you get sick and die from your work, they don't want you to be able to hold the job responsible for making you to come back in an unsafe situation, because they want you to come back too. I mean, I don't know. And if you're Nancy Pelosi and you make a deal on this weak sauce bailout 3 weeks before the election, when Donald Trump hasn't signed anything for 7 months, and if that moves the needle enough that he wins the election, yeah, Bob, you can get a little money now, but would you rather wait 4 more months to get your money, or would you rather wait 4 more years if Donald Trump wins again because of that?
You really think that would be enough to push him over the edge, just getting that check?
I don't think so. I don't know, but I can understand to some degree Democratic reticence on this kind of thing. And I know it hurts Democrats to be seen to be, so far Republicans have been holding it up, and now it looks like everybody's playing politics to people who, just want to, knee-jerk blame politicians for everything. Like, oh, all politicians are the same. Oh, they're all playing politics and da. Yeah, but what's the goal here? The goal is get this maniac out of power ASAP so that we can actually do something, not, indemnify everyone, indemnify the companies for killing people here necessarily, and giving people less money than they, should be getting, and they would be getting under a Biden administration. So, and I'm curious, like, I'm really curious, like, people who like to split their ticket, they're like, okay, I'm gonna vote for Joe Biden, but I'm gonna keep voting for my Republican senator.
They were going to be fired.
The thing here is, after the election,
so he got
Republicans no longer have any incentive to give money to anybody.
squirrel was
They're going to want to kneecap the Democrats.
the baby and the mommy.
So I do think there's an argument that if you let the Republicans keep the Senate, or any positions where they can gum up the works on any kind of financial recovery like they did after the 2008 crisis, if they can gum up the financial, if they can gum up the enforcement of masks or any kind of thing like that, you got to really consider that when you think about letting a Republican stay in the Senate or anywhere at all. If you let them hold one section of the government, they're going to use that to screw up anything. And after Donald Trump is no longer president, the Republicans have no more. They're going to go back to complaining about the deficit, the budget, all this stuff that they don't do while they're in power. But they're going to try to say, "Oh my God, I can't believe Joe Biden wants to give people $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month or whatever he might want to do for people at that point," which may be necessary. So
I don't know.
I don't know what Nancy Pelosi did. I don't know what she should have done. And I think, Wolf Blitzer, I would like to see how Wolf Blitzer questions people like McConnell when he comes on the show.
Like he almost called him Joe McCarthy.
Yeah, I don't know. Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not a good look, and her behavior on the show was a little bit disgusting. I mean, she did not answer the question well. I don't know how she should have answered it. Maybe if you're this close to an election and you're a widely disliked figure of the Democratic Party, and you don't want to say or do anything that's going to upset the Joe Biden apple cart, maybe you just tell Wolf Blitzer, "Hey, I'm not going to come on today. I'll see you in 3 weeks, okay?" Maybe that's what you do.
Right.
Anyways, yeah.
But well, thanks for doing all that work with the notes and everything. It's maybe the last one of the election season. I'm almost nostalgic, but
yeah, maybe so. Well, I don't know. Maybe we can do something around election night or around inauguration or who knows what.
Yeah. I might catch some of those town halls after the fact. I heard that the moderator of the Trump one might have done a good job. So
yeah, that may. And by the way, I'm pissed at I'm pissed at NBC right now for counter programming the Joe Biden.
Ridiculous.
Donald Trump canceled the debate with Joe Biden. Joe Biden says, okay, well, I'm going to do an event during the same time that we would have been doing the debate, but Donald Trump is too chicken shit to face me. And then Joe Biden's like, I want to do counter programming to Joe Biden's event, and NBC gives him the thing, say no. Like, have some journalistic solidarity. No, go do the debate you're supposed to be doing if you want to challenge, if you want to fight with Joe Biden. Like, we're not going to give you. You're bad for this country, and it's like I mentioned on Twitter somewhere. Like, it's like CNN's, was it Jeff Zucker or somebody was like, oh, Donald Trump may be bad for America, but he's good for our ratings.
I think it might have been Les Moonves at CBS.
Okay, there you go.
He got me too after that also. But
okay, was it CBS? I thought it was
believe
CNN.
But anyway,
so anyways, yeah, I'm gonna say like NBC, if you platform him for this thing and he wins, I mean, do you really want that on your conscience because he was able to again successfully suck the media attention away from the guy who should be the president to save lives?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is not a theoretical question at this point. Like, do you really want more Americans to die by giving this guy another chance? He had a chance. He had a chance to have media coverage that night. He threw it away.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, individual institutions, just like I mentioned, the Presidential Debate Commission or whatever, when they come to a situation where they're tempted by Donald Trump with something, where ratings or platforming or whatever, they give him the benefit of the doubt, and then it bites him in the ass. It bites everybody in the ass. So
I gotta stop doing that.
Yeah.
But
all right. Well, anyways, yeah, Bob, I better. It's been a long day over here.
Yeah.
It's been a long. You've heard me yammering for far too long here. So.
Cool. Well, thanks for jumping on the phone here. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Yeah.
Yep. Good luck, Bob. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Join the Rob Burgess Show mailing list. Go to tinyletter.com/The Rob Burgess Show and type in your email address. Then respond to the automatic message. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available, including iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, RSS, and now Spotify. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. If you have something to say, record a voice memo on your smartphone and send it to therobburgessshow@gmail.com. Include voice memo in the subject line of the email. Also, if you want to call or text the show for any reason, the number is 317-674-3547. Until next time.